It's playoff time. It's week 15, and we've got every quarterback and every tight end ranked and tiered. So you're not a first round exit. So before Sunday, let's break down these updated rankings for round one of the playoffs. Welcome to E&M Fantasy Football, presented by ErvinandM.com, where I combine industry-leading data, Vegas sportsbooks, and expert analysis to provide you with optimal weekly rankings for the utmost accuracy when setting your weekly lineups in your fantasy football league. I'm running this on Thursday night for Friday's video. Expect more videos every week for the other unit groupings like wide receiver and running back. And click the playlist in the top right for all the updated rankings for week 15. Sportsbooks have these quarterbacks projected to go for 280 yards or more. There's only three. Josh Allen, 297 over under, 265 yards per game. He scores 2.5 tutties per game, and he gets Detroit's 23rd pass defense in the highest scoring game of the season. Woo! Lamar Jackson, 263 over under, but 305 yards per game. He also scores 2.5 tutties per game, and he gets the Giants. And Joe Burrow, Joey B, Joe Cool, 268 over under, but 285 yards per game. He scores 2.6 tutties per game and gets the Titans this week. They are your elite S-tier quarterbacks for week 15. Undisputed. A-tier is for the rest of the elite quarterbacks, projected for about 260 to 270 yards. Any of these guys can finish in the top four. There's only four, and we're going to move quickly with 20 more pages to get through. Jalen Hurts, 235 over under, 242 yards per game, but 2.2 tutties per game. He gets the league average Pittsburgh pass defense. He'll be fine. Sam Darnold, 250 over under, 254 yards per game. He also scores 2.2 tutties per game and also gets the league average Chicago Bears this week. And Brock Purdy, 278 over under, 276 yards per game. He scores 1.6 tutties per game, and he gets the Rams' 23rd pass defense. And Tua Tagovailoa, 270 over under, 273 yards per game, and 1.9 tutties per game. He has the toughest matchup with Houston's 7th best pass defense, but don't fear. These guys are elite. All these guys, you're good to go. You're not worried about anything. B-tier is projected for about 250 total yards. All these quarterbacks are solid this week. They score about 1.5 tutties per game, and there's 6 of them. So hopefully you're sliding from the B tier or the A or the S. We'll kick it off. ErvinandM.com. ErvinandM.com is my company my best friend and I started in 2020. We literally make everything ourselves by hand. We have earrings, rings, necklaces, bracelets, tie clips, apparel, and more. Over a dozen curated gemstones and 100 handcrafted products. If you need a gift or something special for yourself, use the promo code in the description, find something you love, and buy it today. Now back to the video. If you like spending money and looking good, shop at my store. Buy something. But if you don't, subscribe. It's free. We'll begin with Jaden Daniels, 250 over under, 262 yards per game. Got the best matchup out of the group, facing the 28th worst Saints pass defense. He throws 1.6 tutties per game, and the Commanders are heavy favorites in this one. Call up Vince Vaughn. It's going to be a boat race. Kyler Murray, 248 over under, 254 yards per game. The game has a better than average total, and Kyler gets the league average Patriots secondary this week. He's good for 1.5 total tutties per game, and should have a field day rushing the ball against the below average Pats run D as 6-point favorites. Bo Nix, 254 over under, 242 yards per game. He gets a soft matchup with the Colts this week. They are 26th against the pass, and Nix is good for 1.7 total tutties per game so far this season. They're 4-point favorites at home. And Jared Goff, 255 over under, 251 yards per game. Once again, it's going to be the highest scoring game of the week. Goff's good for 2 passing tutties per game. But the other 2.5 implied touchdowns, which is ridiculous, should come on the ground. Bills are 9th best against the pass. Not the best matchup for fantasy, but in real life, this is going to be better than the Super Bowl. We'll go back to back with Patty Mahomes, Lavon, and Fat Stafford. They both have 250-yard lines this week, and each score 1.5 tutties per game. Stafford has been pretty hot the past few weeks, but his matchup this week against the Niners' 3rd best simmers him down a bit. Mahomes gets the 13th best Browns pass D, and could finally lose a game to famous Jameis. In spite of the matchups, they'll both be fine, but these games are close with good totals. This is your last chance to not fully panic. Sportsbooks have this group projected for about 240 to 250 total yards. And it's Justin Herbert to start the tier. He's got the easiest matchup against the Bucs' 30th worst pass D. They are favorites in a close game at home. Herbert should be okay. Analysis projects Herbert to have an above-average game. We'll see. GL. It's 240 yards, over-under, 230 yards per game. Only 1.2 tutties. Not great. And his opponent, Baker Mayfield, 237 yards, over-under, 256 yards per game. I mean, in spite of 2.4 tutties per game, Vegas has the Bucs as dogs in this one against the Chargers, 8th best. Sportsbooks really think the Chargers D is going to stifle Baker, the touchdown maker, and prevent a shootout. I don't know if I fully believe that, but that's what you get this far down the list. Jordan Love, 236 over under, 248 yards per game. Jordan Love has tossed 2 tutties per game and averaged nearly 250 yards per game. This week he faces Seattle's 10th best in a close game with a decent total. Could turn into a shootout. And his opponent, Geno Smith, 247 over under, 267 yards per game. For all those yards, he only scores 1.2 tutties per game. Seahawks are at home for this one, and yet they're still 2.5-point dogs. Against the below-average 21st Packers secondary. Sportsbooks presume the Packers' young defense are going to prove too much for the passing quarterback, and he's not going to be able to uncork the bottle. CJ Stroud, 250 over-under, 240 yards per game. I mean, 250 yards is 10 more than his average this season. His 1.2 tutties is underwhelming for fantasy owners. The waters are further muddied by Miami's 11th best pass defense, but I will say they are 3-point favorites at home with a good total in this one. Which brings us to D tier. And while you feel amazing about these guys and pretty okay about these guys, you are worried about these guys. This is not where you want to be round 1. These guys are risky. Not the last hope, but for intensive purposes, it might as well be. Caleb Williams, 241 over under, 242 yards per game. I mean, he's got a great matchup against the 29th Vikings pass defense this week. Caleb's not exactly equipped to take advantage of that. His rankings reflect that, and what's more, they are 7-point dogs against Minnesota in Minnesota. Bad total for Chicago as well. Not good. Famous Jameis Winston, 237 over under, but 315 yards per game in his last 6 games. I mean, if you're a gambling man, Jameis is your man. He could throw for 400 yards or 203 interceptions. So he's maintained 315 yards over his last 6 games, but only 1.3 tutties. KC is 20th against the pass, and how beautiful would it be if this is finally how they lost after so many close games? Kirko Chains. They get the league average Raiders, who's trotting out a backup that I don't even know the name of. I mean, Cousins. Hasn't been great in his last few games. But they are 4.5-point favorites in Las Vegas. It should be an easy win, but I wouldn't bet on a 300-yard game. It's 237 over-under for Kirk, 261 yards per game. Sportsbooks have Kirk 25 yards under average this week, with only 1.3 tutties per game as well. Not great. And Drake May, 253 over-under, but only 227 yards per game. I mean, this is the great line for May. The matchup is fine as well against the 18th Cardinals pass defense. The problem is his line's 25 or so over average. He only scores 1.3 tutties per game, and they're 6-point dogs in Arizona this week. Not good. GL. And this is truly your last-ditch effort. It's last viable anything. These quarterbacks are projected for about 220 total yards. They're hardly justifiable. It's the disgusting E tier. If you're starting any of these guys, let me know down below why. And I mean, I hate to do it, but Bryce Young, 204 over-under, in spite of 250 total yards in his last 3 games. I mean, 250 yards is more than respectable. He gets the Cowboys' 22nd worst pass defense, so it should be a real mid-off between teams. Bryce is superior to Cooper Rush, but don't get me wrong, his line stinks. They're 2-point favorites, which could be the first time this season that that's happened, but the total is terrible at 43. Not good. And Aaron Rodgers, 238 over-under, 228 yards per game. I mean, he gets the second worst secondary to exploit. This is the last winnable game for the Jets on the season. Rodgers has played okay, and he should be fine, but it's worth mentioning they're only 3-point favorites, with an even worse total than Bryce, and the Panthers set at 40. And Anthony Richardson, 235 over-under, 210 yards per game. I mean, AR-15 and the books have him 25 yards over average. In spite of his rushing touchdowns, I mean, he only manages 1.2 tutties per game. And he gets a tough defense. Denver's 19th against the pass, though, but Richardson's only set for 188 yards through the air. I mean, they're dogs with a low total in Denver. Not good. Not good at all. But from here, it's RIP. It's less than 200 yards. They're unstartable. It's the rest. Russell Wilson, Will Levis, Cooper Rush, Desmond Ridder, Mac Jones, Jake Hayner. I don't even know who that is. Tommy D. I mean, that's your top quarterbacks. Let's do tight ends. That tier begins with 60 to 70 yards or more. It's Brock Bowers, 64 over-under, but 72 yards per game. Atlanta allows 80% of tight ends to get home. Brock Bowers is going to decimate. George Kittle, 60 over-under, but 73 yards per game. He gets the Rams, who also allow 80% of tight ends to get home. And Trey McBride, 63 over-under, but 71 yards per game. He has the toughest matchup. Patriots stop 60% of tight ends. Not great, but let's see if they stop Trey McBride. Probably not. Probably not. These 3 tight ends truly stand alone. They are your elite S-tier tight ends, undisputed. The A tier is for the rest of the elite tight ends, projected for about 50 to 60 receiving yards. Any of these guys could finish top 4. There's only 3. TJ Hawkinson, 39 over-under, but 50 yards per game. He's easily got the best matchup out of the lot, with an 80% success rate for tight ends against Chicago. He's been averaging 50 yards per game. It would only be better if Sam Darnold tossed him a touchdown for once. He's got 0 touchdowns in 6 games. One of the highest passing tutters in the league with Sam Darnold. It's ridiculous. It's sad. Travis Kelce, 55 over-under, 53 yards per game. Kelce's line is absurd, especially considering the Browns stopped 60% of tight ends. Kelce isn't just any tight end, though, but he's not as explosive as he once was. He should be fine, though. He's still one of the best tight ends in the league. And Johnny Smith, 44 over-under, 53 yards per game. And once again, Jonnu proving the haters wrong. His line's a little bit low. His average is as good as Kelce's. But he has a bad matchup against Houston. They stop 70% of tight ends, so Mike McDaniels better do some scheme magic like he does. B tier is for the rest of the tight end ones. There's 6. If you've got any of these guys in this tier, and obviously these guys, you're feeling great. B tier is projected for 40 to 50 yards, and it kicks off with Tucker Kraft. 33 over-under, which is a crime, but 40 yards per game. 7 out of 9 tight ends get home against Seattle. This is a good game with a good total, and Kraft scores a tutty 50% of the time. His line's low, but Vegas' haters lock him in. Cade Otton, 41 over-under, 44 yards per game. Cade Otton has, by all accounts, been just a bit better than Tucker Kraft, albeit with a 30% touchdown rate. Problem here, though, is that he faces the Chargers, who stop 50% of tight ends. But he should be fine. He's a freak. He's super underrated. Jake Ferguson, 38 over-under, 40 yards per game. Big Ferg should get a chance to shine against the Panthers, who allow 80% of tight ends to put in work against them. He should be Cooper's best friend in this highly exploitable match against an otherwise top 12 back 7. Hunter Henry, 45 over-under, 47 yards per game. Hunter Henry has the best line and average of the group. He finds himself a few spots down, however, facing Arizona, who only allow 40% of tight ends to get home. Couple that with the implied team total for the Patriots, and it's not as good as usual for Henry. Sam Laporta, 38 over-under, 37 yards per game. Laporta hasn't been relied on like he was last year. He gets the Bills, who only allow 60% of tight ends to do anything. That should be enough for Laporta, but his lack of production over expected lands him here. And Evan Ingram, 39 over-under, 41 yards per game. I mean, he's the last hope. He's nearly 40 all for his numbers this season, and he gets an exploitable matchup against the Jets. They only stop 30% of tight ends. However, the Jags are, to no one's surprise, dogs at home. Very sad. Very bad. But we've arrived to the C tier and the mid-lords. If you have anyone here, I'm sorry. It is your last viable anything. It's 30 to 35 yards and a prayer. Mark Andrews, 36 over-under, 38 yards per game. He lives and dies by a touchdown. The good news is it's a coin flip if he scores one or not. The bad news is the Giants hold 50% of tight ends to nothing. And boast the 6th best back 7. So, GL. Zach Ertz, 32 over-under, 38 yards per game. I mean, he's got a promising matchup this week against the Saints. 78% of tight ends go over when facing New Orleans, and the Commanders are huge favorites in Caesars Superdome. He may not be 100% though. Vegas has him a few yards under average in this one. Keep an eye on him. Pat Freiermuth, 35 over-under, 36 yards per game. I mean, why Vegas decided he should climb out of the gutter tier in this week against the scary Philly defense, I'm not entirely sure. 50% of tight ends are stuffed against the number 1 overall total Philadelphia Eagles defense. GL. Kyle Pitts, 34 over under, 39 yards per game. And the bad matchups continue. Pitts and Cousins have came back down to earth, and with that, they face the Raiders, who only allow 56% of tight ends to get home. Not good. And we'll go back to back to back with the last three in this tier, since they are nearly identical lines and matchups. Juwan Johnson, Dalton Kincaid, and Dalton Schultz. Kincaid's the most talented, but he faces Detroit, who only allows 40% of tight ends to do anything. While Juwan and Schultz draw tight end defenses that hold them to 60% on the season, it's a little bit better. They're all set for barely 30 yards and have averaged about the same. For what it's worth, I would slot them in this order if you're this down bad. GL. From here, though, it's over. 20 yards or less. They're unstartable. It's the rest. Noah Gray. Or you know what I'm saying? Buy a hat. Get a ring. Get some bracelets. You have no drip. You look disgusting. Cole Kmet. Noah Fant. Isaiah Likely. Mike Gesicki. Conklin. Sanders. It doesn't matter. I'll throw your quarterbacks and tight ends full screen. Back on screen now. Leave your questions below, and I sincerely hope this helps everyone watching. Thank you all for your time. All the rankings and news for Week 15 will be in the playlist in the top right of the screen. So make sure you subscribe and turn on post notifications so you get all these videos each week before submitting your lineups. It's free, so it's a good value. But if you like looking good and spending money, spend in my store and watch some more videos.